This video is brought to you by Pandawill.com. Pandawill sells thousands of electronics directly from China, including the Meizu M1 Note and Jiayu S3. Please be sure to check them out using the links in the video description. The Meizu M1 Note and Jiayu S3 are both advertised as affordable high-end devices. With very similar specifications, you may find it difficult to choose one device over the other. Despite having similar specifications and similar prices for that matter, the M1 Note and S3 are two very different devices for two very different types of people. If you're still on the fence about either of these devices, or if you're just curious to see which one comes out on top, then you've come to the right place. This is my in-depth comparison of the Meizu M1 Note and Jiayu S3. Although both devices are very similarly sized, each takes their own approach to design. The Jiayu S3 is available in a matte plastic black, whereas the Meizu M1 Note is available in many glossy plastic options. The curves on the M1 Note are much more pronounced than those on the S3, which makes the M1 Note slightly more comfortable in the hand. The Jiayu S3 feels more so solid, but I have yet to find any scratches on either the S3 or M1 Note. The S3's design does have a few nice features too, like side edges, a side-placed power button, and rear-facing speakers. However, the M1 Note does feel more comfortable and overall nicer in the hand. The Jiayu S3 is just 1.3mm taller and 0.3mm wider than the Meizu M1 Note. The thickness of each device is equal at 8.9mm. As for looks, it's really just a matter of personal preference. I personally prefer the M1 Note's flashy and sleek design, but you may prefer the S3's simple and understated design. With that said, this round goes to the Meizu M1 Note. Both the M1 Note and S3 have excellent 5.5-inch 1080p displays. However, the M1 Note's display has a better contrast ratio and also has a greater brightness range. Colors look more punchy on the M1 Note, and images look richer and more lifelike. The lowest brightness setting on the M1 Note is also much more acceptable for dark environments. The M1 Note's display does have a warmer tint, however, where the S3 has a more neutral tone. The major difference for me though was the poor resistance to scratches on the Jiayu S3's display. Jiayu does claim that the display is coated with Corning Gorilla Glass, but I found it very easy to scratch. Just putting the S3 in my pocket without keys or anything extra resulted in some noticeable scratches. Despite these differences, both displays look excellent overall and have great viewing angles. The M1 Note wins this round though, thanks to its better contrast ratio, greater brightness range, and better resistance to scratches. The audio output quality on each device is actually about the same. The S3 has stereo speakers, but they don't sound any better than average. Both phones have speakers which are tinty at full volume, and can be easily blocked in different places. Because of this, I'm going to have to call this round a draw. I did go out and take a few side-by-side camera shots to see how each phone compared. To keep this test fair, I used the System Camera app with automatic settings. The results indicate that the Jiayu S3's images are generally better, because the colors are richer. Jiayu's over-the-air update has improved the camera quality on the S3, to the point where the camera on the M1 Note falls behind. The Meizu M1 Note's camera isn't bad by any means, but it's just clearly inferior to the Jiayu S3's camera. However, video recording was much better on the Meizu M1 Note than it was on the Jiayu S3. Since most people use their cameras for just taking photos though, this round goes to the Jiayu S3. If you do want to take a lot of videos, you may want to consider the M1 Note over the S3 instead. The software experience is where things start to get really interesting. While the Jiayu S3 runs a lightly skinned version of traditional Android KitKat, the Meizu M1 Note runs Flyme, a fork of Android KitKat. As far as the software experience goes, stock Android users will find themselves right at home with the S3. The S3's theme app, which allows you to go back to a more stock Android look, one-click built-in root toggle, and overall fluidity will greatly appeal to both general and enthusiast Android users. The M1 Note software is much more unique and heavily customized. The icons used for the default launcher for apps actually look pretty good, and if you don't care for them, that's okay, because you can always turn it off in the settings. The pre-installed apps are also of higher quality compared to the stock Android apps. However, some are still available only in Chinese. My biggest complaint was how navigation is handled inside of third-party Android apps. Although there is a capacitive home button on the bottom, this device lacks back and menu keys. Instead, Flyme adds another row above the home button for a single back key. To switch apps, you need to swipe up instead of pressing or holding a menu or home key. These changes still throw me off 6 weeks after using the device lightly. A few other flaws in no particular order include a missing setting toggle in the notification shade, missing Google Play Store, although it can be installed fairly easily without rooting, check a link in the description, and an issue where you can't move the cursor when editing text more than once when using a third-party keyboard. Flyme does have quite a few issues in its current state, but the S3 software also has a few flaws. You can't swipe right to dismiss notifications, which I thought was standard in Android, but no, you have to swipe left instead. They also rebranded the lock screen with their own logo and changed the toggle colors from white to that ugly hollow blue that I thought died in Android 4.2 Jelly Bean. Both devices are equally likely to receive Android 5.0 Lollipop updates, so it's just a matter of when those become available. I still prefer using the Jiayu S3 software, since it has both fewer and less significant issues. If you've used Flyme before and are used to its strange ways, then you may actually prefer the software on the M1 Note. As a traditional Android user, however, I'm going to give this round to the Jiayu S3. Since both devices are powered by the MediaTek MT6752 octa-core Cortex-A53 64-bit processor clocked at 1.7 GHz, performance is excellent on both the M1 Note and S3. They also each have 2 GB of RAM, although there is a variant of the S3 with 3 GB of RAM. AnTuTu scores ranged from 39,000 to 41,000 on each device, and general day-to-day performance was about equal. However, I have noticed that apps do launch ever so slightly faster on the Jiayu S3. This could be because of the heavy software skin on the M1 Note, but you likely won't notice any real-world difference. The difference is close to inconsiderable, but I did record a speed test to see how long it would take to open 7 individual apps. Both the Meizu M1 Note and Jiayu S3 Standard Edition have 16 GB of internal storage. Although the Jiayu S3 does have the advantage of having microSD card expansion up to 64 GB. So the Jiayu S3 also wins this round because there is an option to expand the storage. The Meizu M1 Note's battery is rated at 3,140 mAh, while the Jiayu S3's battery is rated at 3,000 mAh. Since battery life is difficult to test because usage can vary by so much, I decided to do a video playback test. Now unfortunately, I wasn't able to record this on camera because my camera usually only lasts about an hour and I can't charge it while I'm filming, so you'll just have to take my word for it. I set the brightness to about 90% on the Meizu M1 Note and about 75% on the Jiayu S3, but the actual brightness levels were as close to the same as possible. The levels can't both be 90% because that level is much brighter on the Jiayu S3 than it is on the Meizu M1 Note. I also put both devices into airplane mode, turned off all wireless connections, and muted the volume just to maintain consistency. Each device had 100% battery life to start with. This test is a simulation of how long each device would last on an airplane, where you wouldn't be able to connect to a wireless network nor charge your device. The Meizu M1 Note ended up lasting for 8 hours and 28 minutes, while the Jiayu S3 ended up lasting for 7 hours and 4 minutes. That's not really a huge difference, but it may translate into an extra hour or two of normal day-to-day use on the M1 Note. I wasn't able to test both devices in real-world scenarios since the M1 Note is incompatible with my carrier. Nevertheless, this test should translate into better real-world battery life, so the Meizu M1 Note wins this round. If we add up the results, the Meizu M1 Note won 3 rounds, while the Jiayu S3 won 4 rounds. There are advantages and disadvantages to each device, and it's ultimately your decision on which device is best for you. Some things are more or less important to each buyer, so please make sure to consider your options carefully. If you want a sleek design, great display, and excellent battery life, and are okay with 16 gigs of storage and sacrificing a software experience, then the Meizu M1 Note is the best choice for you. Otherwise, if you want a simple design, good software experience, and a slightly better camera, and are okay with the low contrast ratio display and slightly less battery life, then you should choose the Jiayu S3. Please do keep in mind that these comparisons are to only give you an idea at which device is better overall, and each device performs differently in each category. There is no ultimate smartphone that gives you everything you could possibly ask for. You must be able to reflect on what each device offers for the price and then make a final decision. If you do want to check these devices out, there will be links in the description to view both the Meizu M1 Note and Jiayu S3 on Pandawill's website. As always, please make sure to like this video if you found it helpful or informative, and also feel free to leave comments if you'd like to discuss the differences between these devices further. That is going to be all for this video. Thank you for watching, and please be sure to subscribe.